Okay, we are on Caleb's route, chapter 2, Meeting of the Guard. My dogs are wilding, so excuse them. I wanted to come visit you more, but you complained every time I stopped by. He's surprisingly protective of his patients, more like annoyingly protective. He muttered the words quietly from across the room where he was staring out a large window. He didn't even look at our way. You think everything is annoying. Not everything, just annoying things. To be fair, I'm certain Dr. Sasakai, I don't know, Sasakai. I say his name wrong every single, like, 2 times in a row until, like, before I get it right. Anyways, Dr. Sasakai only had your best interest in mind by limiting visitors. I still don't know why Caleb got to be the one to spend time with her. There was a significant chance of unintentional mimicry if we were in close proximity to her. Caleb's abilities were the least troubling if that were to happen again. I think getting elbowed in the head by Rook-enhanced strength would be pretty troubling. Oh, bitch, let me turn this down for myself. I guess we can ask Magnus about that one. Where is that jerk anyways? Somewhere not answering his messages as usual. Though I hadn't been officially released from the medical ward yet, my health had improved enough I was going to be allowed at a casual meeting of sorts. At least for a little while, if the one leading the meeting ever showed up. It seemed like a last minute sort of thing, and as far as I could tell, it was just to meet the other top ranked espers at endgame. The group consisted of what was collectively termed the First Guard, but there were actually 2 teams, the King's Guard and the Queen's Guard. Me being the Queen in this instance. The guards seemed to function half as bodyguards and half as functional teams. I hadn't met anyone else on the King's Guard until a little while ago, but my own guard was made up of Van, Caleb, and Ari. Which would explain why Caleb was sticking so close to me since my arrival, I suppose. I let out a soft sigh, wondering where Magnus was. We'd all been waiting more than 10 minutes by now. You okay, Nori? Yeah, just a little tired. It's annoying that walking to the other side of the building is enough to tire me out. You're still recovering, you know. Believe me, I know Dr. Sasakai is determined not to let me forget. Sounds about right. And don't worry, if Magnus doesn't get here soon, I'll hunt him down and drag him here by that stupid braid. You won't be alone, I'll help. I want to see that. Not like you haven't seen it before. Never by the braid before. Besides, you're always so cute when you're annoyed. I'll never turn the chance to see it again. Oh, I'm always cute when I'm annoyed? As long as you're not annoyed at me, you are. No, wait. You're even cute when you're annoyed at me. It's just more fun when you're annoyed at someone else. Odette rolled her eyes at Van's flirting, but then there was a slight smile on her face. Caleb let out a disgusted grunt, and Ari, well, he was Ari. Everyone had been very casual with me so far, somehow not something I'd expect. Endgame gave off such a lofty sort of feeling that they were interplanetary significance as an organization. They helped keep peace and across multiple worlds. I never saw Endgame as particularly militant, though their work did involve fighting, but they were, for all intents and purposes, a military force. I'd imagine them as, well, I don't know. Not as grumpy men glaring out windows and friendly women who like to flirt with their wives in the boss's office, I suppose. But that's what they're like. I wasn't sure if everyone was acting especially casual to make me feel better, or if they're always like this. But it did set me at ease either way. Because the way Endgame was glorified and built up in society, the mystery behind their inner workings, the enormity of all of it had been so crushing at first. It still is, of course. But now that I was actually on the inside, it wasn't nearly as alien and strange as I thought it would be. They were all just normal people. Like Van and Mara, they fell in love and got married. They flirted and teased each other like any other couple. Some were grumpy like Caleb, some were eccentric, but it wasn't quite what I'd been imagining either. Even so, lodged firmly at the back of my mind was this fluttery, anxious whisper saying I didn't belong. I didn't know if I could silence it because I still half agreed with it. It was about a half an hour later, and Mara was getting ready to go hunt him down when the door finally burst open. A blond man stepped through the freezing in place when he saw us all. He met everyone's eyes in turn, gaze finally settling on me. What are you all doing in my office? Don't tell me you forgot you called a meeting with everyone. He definitely forgot. Yep, that is the face of a man who has no idea what you're talking about. Forgot, he called the meeting less than 2 hours ago. How do you forget that? I take it you did not write yourself a memo. I was in a meeting with the council all morning and didn't have time, so you completely forgot and we waited for you for an hour and a half. Well, our meeting ran over and you stopped by the galley for a snack. Magnus looked completely affronted by that very thought. I came straight here, I'll have you know. You still have crumbs all down your jacket. Magnus glanced down, hands frantically swiping at the non-existent crumbs. He glared at her, but she looked completely unfazed. Somehow I was getting the feeling this whole scene had been played out so many times before that they were just going to have to go through the motions at this point. Magnus finally stepped into his office all the way and pasted a smile on his face as he headed behind the desk. Well, since we're all here, why don't we chat for a while? That's why we're here in the first place. You must be Nori Adonis, and you must be Magnus Ultrich. Surprised? Not really. I heard I broke your glasses. They tell me you don't remember doing that. I don't, but I suppose I should apologize. I started to stand, but he motioned me to sit. It's fine. I suppose it makes us even. Not that the thought of getting even made me happy. I apologize for my lateness, but shall we get down to business now that I'm here? You're the holdup, Maggie, not us. Magnus leaned against the desk, twirling a stylus between his fingers as he studied me. There was a faint smile on his lips, but it faded as he began to speak. I assume you're at least somewhat aware of your current situation by now, yeah? Meaning you know why you were kidnapped, as you call it? I was tempted to call out their insistence on not referring to it that way, but it seemed like an argument I wouldn't win. To my surprise, Caleb did it for me. She probably calls it that because that's what it was, Magnus. We forced her to come with us against her will, very much against her will. We can't pretty that up and put a bow on it, and just because we don't like the word used to describe it. Thank you. It wasn't an unlawful abduction, but we were within our right. Don't act like we operate within laws, Magnus. The council does whatever the hell it wants, and no one questions it. And in this case, what it wanted was to abduct someone. So that's what we did. Wow, okay, I didn't expect him of all people to make it an argument. Hey, you go, Caleb. Finally, somebody gets it. Not just someone, but an unregistered Esper. And you neglect to mention one thing, Caleb. Nori chose to come here in the end. We didn't force her. Isn't that also right? Fair enough. But my options were also limited at the time, and it isn't like you're letting me leave. You knew that when you chose us, didn't you? So a choice is still a choice. Did you really bring me here to argue semantics? No, of course not. Though it's somewhat entertaining distraction, nevertheless, I hope you realize that as much as there was a reason for bringing you here, we also had a reason for doing it the way we did it. Well, I did hope that wasn't just the usual method of recruitment. His lips twitched, but he didn't quite smile at that one. Hardly. As he began to speak again, the amusement evaporated and a strange coldness crept into his eyes and voice. Nori, you're probably not aware, but in this illustrious organization, there are multiple specialized groups who focus on specific responsibilities and functions, all to keep things running smoothly. One of those is called the Morai. To put it in simple terms, they're a group of bishops who keep a close watch on possible future events in the hopes that if and when tragedy is about to strike, we can put a countermeasure in place before it happens. When you were identified as a possible queen candidate, it was the Morai who predicted that many other groups would be targeting you as well. Among the possible futures were several that were, shall we say, rather unpleasant for you? Yes, but also for many others, taking you as we did, with no warning, no discussion, and no indication of what faction we were from, was all in the attempt to protect you and many others. It was to ensure our success in achieving that, and here you are, safe and sound, even if there were some bumps along the way, so I wouldn't apologize for that decision. I never asked for an apology. But even if you think your actions were justified, no, even if they were justified, I have no intention of pretending it was anything other than what it was either. Couldn't argue against some unseen future possibility that was true, but just because something terrible was averted, I didn't think it made my experience any less traumatic or frightening. Magnus watched me for a long time, twirling the stylus between his fingers. Everyone else was silent as well. But he finally shrugged and moved to sit into the large chair behind the desk. Fair enough. He folded his hands in front of him, resting his index fingers against his lips. I suppose you realize you'll be staying with us going forward? Indefinitely. I sighed softly. Of course I had, but it was so frustrating hearing vocalized so coldly because I'm a queen rank. Yep. To be frank about it, your abilities are too dangerous to allow you to live out in normal society. As a triad citizen, legal policy gives us the authority to keep you here for the greater good of Archelaus. Van was the one who put her arm around me, giving me a gentle squeeze. Perhaps she could guess what this meant for me. I'd worked so hard all this time for nothing, endless studying for test after test to prove my merit to the Albionian government, all preparation for a future, which had suddenly taken a sharp turn into an unknown, unplanned, and unwanted territory. It's not so bad here, I promise. It wasn't as if I thought it would be bad. Well, I suppose there's just a little of that. It wasn't like their jobs weren't dangerous. Let's see what my doggies are doing. Oh well, anyway. My throat tightened and I tried to swallow past the growing lump. I absolutely refused to cry in front of a room of people I barely knew. Alone in the shower, yeah. In front of all these professionals, no. When my eyes started to sting in spite of my efforts, I jumped up and paced to the window. At the very least, they could stare at my back instead of at my face while I cried. A small noise came from Caleb as he turned away from me, but I didn't look his way. Staring out at a beautiful city, I felt smaller than ever before. You surely knew it would come to this. His voice was very quiet, every word dropping into the otherwise silent room like a heavy stone. We looked into your background, and I suspect you must have had known you were an Esper. I hastily wiped at my eyes before I turned around to face him. I hoped it wouldn't. So you acknowledge you were aware that you were an Esper? Should I not? It seemed like you already know the answer anyway. I don't know anything for sure. I simply have a theory. Queens are able to mimic even the PSI ways of the normal people around them. I suppose that's why your childhood tests were conflicting. But you likely exhibited signs of PSI development throughout your life. I'm quite impressed you managed to keep it a secret so long. Given your rank, I didn't know I was a queen rank. Not that it makes a difference, but I thought I was just a low-level infantry at best, and I had never done anything like that indicated I could be something like a queen rank. It isn't quite true though, is it, Normie? Girl, what the fuck? Where did that come from? What are you talking about? I believe you should be aware of the nano-overgrowth incident that occurred in your primary school while you were a student there. Yes, of course I remember that. I ended up in the hospital because of it. My memories of it are a little fuzzy since it was long ago. But as I understand it, there were a lot of students affected, though there were no long-term effects for you. Others in your school were left with permanent fade symptoms, or were you not aware? Some died. I was aware that some students died. Nano-overgrowth can happen spontaneously, of course, usually with unknown causes. All we know is that a core group of nanites malfunction and began to interact with each other in a way that causes them to begin to rapidly reproduce, and sudden expansion of individuals' nanosystem can overwhelm the brain synapses. The end result is the worst case, death. Sometimes survivors end up with permanent loss of pigmentation of the hair or eyes, which is also a symptom of fade. I already know all that, but I don't know why you're bringing it up as if it was my fault. What you may not know is that certain types of espers can trigger overgrowth incidents with their PSI when their PSI is uncontrolled. We still don't know how many spontaneous overgrowth events could possibly trace to the awakening of nearby espers. It's a topic of study by some of ours in the research department. Are you saying I'm to blame for that incident? The atmosphere had to become heavy, and my question hung on the air unanswered for a long moment. Magnus's icy eyes never left my face. I looked away, heart sinking. That had the incident really been my fault? I had no idea overgrowth could be caused by espers, but that was just some incident, right? It's not like he had proof that particular incident wasn't spontaneous, but if it was me, I mean, people died. Just like how the uncontrolled PSI burst that had hurt people as well. If Magnus was trying to make a case that I was a danger to other people, I wasn't sure I could argue. No one is blaming or accusing anyone of anything, Nori. Right, Magnus? And like that, the tension broke. Magnus smiled, waving his hand dismissively. Of course not. There's nothing to accuse you of anyway. Weren't you just a child when the event happened? And nevertheless, based on our information, it does seem probable that you were the epicenter of that event. And it's an example of why people like us end up in places like this to learn to control our abilities so we don't harm others unconsciously. So that was his point after all. And better to do it on command and intentionally, right? That isn't funny, Magnus. Oh, I'm sorry, wasn't it? I'm about to intentionally hurt someone in this very room if he doesn't knock it off. Now, no reason to threaten Caleb today, Mara. He's not done anything too terrible yet. I was threatening you, Magnus. I don't think I've ever done anything terrible either, though. Don't play innocent. We all can see what you're doing. Well, I'm not particularly trying to hide it. I'm right here in the plain sight, aren't I? Magnus, how long have we known you? That playing innocent thing does not fool us. I listened to them bicker for a few minutes without saying anything else. It did feel like Magnus was trying to antagonize me. Something I hadn't expected and didn't really understand unless they were just upset I had hidden my status for so long. Nora, you needn't let Magnus drive this conversation alone. I believe you told Caleb previously that you had questions as well. Those of us who were present, including Magnus, are most likely best equipped to answer them, so now would be a good time. Well, I've been wondering how in-game you even found me. That night Caleb said it was because of Jack. Oh, you were wondering about that? It wasn't Jack specifically. A king rank we kept track of, and Delphine was the first to become aware of you. A king rank? That was the man Jack had mentioned at the cafe then. Unlike me, he has the unique ability to track other F-class espers. When his faction began to move to collect you, that alerted me to the possibility you were significant. The only thing worth the risk of poking their heads into our domain would be a queen or king rank. Our bishops were able to confirm your general location and probable identity when we realized Jack was in New Albion. We're simply lucky we got to you first, and now that first confirmed F-class queen is a part of in-game. She's not an object we were fighting over, Magnus. We were trying to save her, not just obtain her. I never said otherwise, did I? Ooh, he is passive-aggressive as fuck. He didn't, but somehow it definitely came across that way. It's the first confirmed F-class queen rank. No wonder there had been such a scramble to get to me first. Even though the frustration, I could understand what that meant. If Trent had known, he would have been ecstatic. So I'm too dangerous and unique to get to live a normal life anymore. Magnus gave me a sardonic smile. Welcome to Endgame, Miss Adonis, where everyone else is also too dangerous and unique to live a normal life, I guess. So in that regard, I was no different than the rest of them. They had just been found earlier than I had been. It's obvious you don't wish to be here. Would I have hidden that I was an Esper all this time if I wanted to be here? Would you have hidden it if you knew you were a queen, Nori? Even knowing it could have posed a risk to the people around you, I couldn't help but wonder about the purpose of that question. Not the question alone, but this whole meeting. He'd spent an awful lot of time poking at me and asking pointed questions. Some kind of test, maybe? That could make sense. Just because every high-ranked Esper was pulled in the endgame, it didn't mean that they were all suitable to be here. If someone was a queen rank and they had an unstable personality, what did that mean for them? Where did they end up? Was he trying to gauge how safe my personality was so they could figure out if I really deserved a spot on this guard? If so, how should I have answered? I'd have done the right thing. I probably would have, yes. Thinking about ifs is pointless at this stage. I'm going to be analytical. I took a deep breath and met his gaze again. What's the point of answering this or asking in the first place? I don't mean to offend, but thinking about ifs is useless at this stage, isn't it? If I thought it was pointless, I wouldn't ask. With all due respect, that isn't the impression I've gotten so far. Caleb snorted softly when I said that. I seemed to look at him and there was a slight smirk on his face. In the end, I didn't know my rank, so I hid it successfully until a few days ago, and I'm here anyways. I still haven't had the bubble bath I wanted. I doubt I'll ever know my exam results, and you still owe me a bag of fresh tangerines, or at least someone does. We can have the bishops pull their salaries. It's their fault we didn't sit down and have a reasonable conversation with you over this whole thing anyway. Hey, the future's tricky, pal. We do our best. And you've never had a reasonable conversation with anyone about anything, Kale. So they do call him Kale, like for a nickname, okay. Looks like the newbie queen holds grudges, man. You might want to take better care of her fresh fruits going forward, or you may get a building knocked on your head next time. You're the one that made me lose it, though. She's not the only one that holds grudges from what I can see. You still haven't let the building thing go. Vanessa, Caleb, we are in the middle of a meeting. Is there even a point to this meeting besides discussing the what ifs and things from 20 years ago? Nora's here now and she wants to know what's in store for her. What the hell is all this beating around the bush for? Magnus, if you wanted to bully her, you could have done it in the infirmary without involving the rest of us. My intent wasn't to bully her. Bullshit. Well, I suppose that's enough depressing talk anyway. And you more or less answered how I expected you to answer. What the heck did that mean? I'm going to ask the rest of you to clear out. I'd like to talk to our little queen alone for a bit. Alone? Because of how I answered the question just now, or just something else. And I really hope Little Queen was going to stick as a nickname. In spite of Magnus's request, Ari was the only one who immediately moved towards the door. The others stayed where they were, reluctant on all their faces. It felt like it took a long time for any of them to get up. Mara stood slowly but passed very close to Magnus on their way out. Plain ice. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be low enough I didn't hear, but I definitely caught the muttered words before she left. Odette followed her, but amusingly pointed to her eyes, then to Magnus before she went into the hallway. Vanessa leaned down to me, a serious look on her face. You've seen how he can be. Don't let him bully you. I'll be fine. And don't worry, if you hit him, we won't tell anyone. I'm not gonna hit him. We'll be outside anyway. You could just walk out if he's being annoying. And if you decide to drop the building on its head, just give us a little warning first. I'm sure it won't come to that. Guys, this kind of hurts a little. What do you think I'm gonna do to her? Nothing, if you know what's good for you. I didn't know if I should be frightened or amused by the way they treated him. There didn't seem to be much in the way of respect exactly, but then I guess they'd all known each other since they were children. It came across in all the ways they interacted, that easy teasing they constantly did. Some of the threats don't sound teasing though. Oh well, he was a little odd. I wasn't sure what to expect when the others were gone. For a moment, he was silent. Then he stood and came to join me by the window, gazing out across the cityscape before us. He leaned close to the window, his breath fogging the glass as he stared outside. You don't have to look so frightened. I'm not afraid of you. I'm glad to hear it. You and I, perhaps it's much to say we have a great deal in common. But we do at least have one thing in common, and that is that we sit atop this vast organization in a place that can be lonely. He gave me a long look. I still won't apologize for disrupting your life, but it is regretful you escaped detection as long as you did. This would have been easier for you had you only been enrolled in our academy as a child. Then your recruitment would have been a natural result of that. But I wasn't. I think I just need to focus on what that means, not what I could have been. That would be ideal, but it isn't always that easy, is it? It's not, but I guess it feels like it might get easier if I keep reminding myself it's necessary. Does it really work that way for you? Does it not work that way for you? For the first time, the smile on his face looked genuine, but also sad. It would be nice if it did. We'll do whatever we can to help you adjust, but I'm afraid you won't have much time to acclimate before you begin training. With the level of ability and potential we know you possess, it's necessary to help you learn how to control your PSI as quickly as possible. Children have the added benefit of growing into their abilities as they learn control. You do not. The initial power surge left you with a PSI boost you may find difficult to adjust to. That said, I suppose we're lucky that you remained in New Albion's education system for as long as you did. Dr. Sasakai believes your neural enhancements will help your training proceed much faster than another adult. That made sense. They were supposed to help with learning speed, not that I thought that this was what they'd help me learn. You'll be receiving several other nano expansions going forward, primarily to help with bioregeneration. Most of us have them to keep ourselves in top physical form. That must have been how Caleb and Ari recovered from their previous injuries so quickly. I hadn't really thought about it that night in the cafe, but looking back, they've been rather pristine for having had a building fall on them. We'll assign a teacher for you, someone from your guard. I'm sure you'll progress faster if you work with a single person for a while. Please not Caleb. I just didn't think I could handle his gruff attitude every single day. I'll take your opinions under consideration. I chewed my lip and finally asked something that had been weighing on my mind all this time. Will responsibilities just be assigned to me? Do I get to choose? I know there are different divisions, medical, research. Do I get to learn about different areas and decide where I want to work, even if I'm assigned to the guard? Under normal circumstances, agents are able to choose a path most suited for their skill and personal wishes, yes. But his expression darkened and the coldness edged its way back into his voice. Espers like you and I are not normal, Nori. Even by Esper standards, we stand apart from the rest. The Council is unlikely to allow a queen rank to languish in the research division, ops, or medical. There is a certain optic to having a queen rank at the top of our organization, especially after the spot was empty for so long. That you're here now sends a message to the public, to the other factions. Having you out in the fields does the same. I don't believe they'll let you out of that entirely, but that is the future. For now, you need to learn how to use your abilities safely, so that there's no need to worry about things like assignments. Not for the time being. The Council, huh? I'd always thought Magnus was the top person at Endgame. That's how it seemed from the outside anyway. But listening to him talk about this Council made it appear otherwise. I wonder just how many of the decisions were his and how many came from elsewhere. I do hope you find it easy to work with your guard. I know your introduction to them wasn't terribly pleasant. Caleb in particular was displeased with the order to apprehend you off the street, when none of them were thrilled with it. Caleb in particular was kind of a jerk about it though. You'll learn that's how he tends to respond to things that upset him. He didn't have to take it out on me. You're welcome to drop another building on him, just not this one if you please. I'm never gonna live that down, am I? Highly doubtful. It was interesting that Magnus was more pleasant now that we were alone than that he had been when everyone else was in the room. How strange. I'll have the others escort you back to the infirmary. I'm sure you is impatient for your return, and I'd prefer not to endure a lecture from him today. He always calls me an imbecile right to my face. Yeah, he calls you that behind your back too. And Nora, I truly mean it this time. Welcome to Endgame. Thanks. Though I would prefer to keep you here for an additional few days for observation, I decided to have you moved to your personal quarters in the morning. As usual, he was typing rapidly into a tablet as he spoke to me and checked over my charts at the same time. You will still be required in for checkups, and I do not yet intend to clear you for use of PSI for at least another week. Your PSI fatigue continues to improve. I believe all signs of it will be dissipated within the next 2 to 3 days. We will give you a further few days to ensure full recovery. I believe a change of scenery will help facilitate your recovery and ease your residential anxiety. You mean I'll finally get to sleep without someone keeping an eye on me? It's not like watching you sleep is my favorite new hobby either. I'll be worried if it was, but you could always ask one of the others to stay with me if you find it that boring. The others have better things to do, but you don't. Actually, there's something else I was wondering about. Maybe I should have asked Magnus, but I didn't think about it until we were on the way back. I really need to contact my parents. I'm sure they're completely freaking out having not heard from me, but my net access is still limited. I can't send or receive messages right now. Has anyone contacted them to let them know what's happening? There's probably someone somewhere whose job it is to damage control that stuff. Then who should I ask about it? No idea. Informing their parents. The parents are kidnapping child is fine. Isn't something we usually do. He blew a short, loud puff of air from his lips and started towards the door. I'll look into it. You don't have to do that. It's better than watching you sleep anyway. I probably look like an angel when I sleep, thank you. He gave me a sardonic glance over his shoulder. Do you want me to stay and confirm it when you take a nap in a bit, or do you want me to go check on the parent situation? Fine, please go check on the parent situation. I don't want you to watch me sleep. You see me drool on my pillows enough to last a lifetime, I'm sure. 2 of them at least. With the quip, he left. A short while later, I was alone again, having been given the order to rest from the doctor. I flopped back on the bed, my head churning with too many facts and too much uncertainty. That wouldn't change for a while, I suppose. I rolled onto my side, hoping that I could at least talk to my parents soon. After what felt like a long time, I finally shut my eyes and fell blissfully into a dreamless sleep. And that's where we end that chapter. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.